Another common decision-making trap that I see is rushing through discomfort. Our perception is, how do we react to whatever is in front? Welcome to Courageous Leaders Connected Teams. I'm your host, Stephanie Freeth, and today we're talking about decision-making. This is a really wide-ranging topic, and I want to give you a little bit of a different spin on decision-making. We're going to look at left brain types of ways to make decisions, and we're also going to look at more creative, right brain, whole body ways to make decisions. We'll also consider how your Enneagram type may be impacting your decision making in ways that you're not even aware. So stay tuned for this episode. If you're a leader making decisions all the time, I imagine this will bring you some nuggets of gold that you can apply to your decision making frameworks. When leaders make decisions, poor decision-making can show up in a lot of ways and have a lot of different negative impacts, such as ineffective strategies, strained relationships, and lost opportunities. And I want to have you think about something that you probably aren't aware of, and it's your perception. Our perception is, how do we react to whatever is in front of us? Are we coming from a state of threat, or are we coming from a state of curiosity? When you learn how to shift your perception, you can have better strategies, clearer insights, and more aligned solutions. Well, here's a pro tip. You know you're making a decision from fear when you only see two options. You see this or that. You don't even see a third or a fourth option. So that's one clue to help you understand your own perception. And am I seeing this from the state of fear if I'm just seeing it from this or that, yes or no, black or white? Another way that I encourage leaders to think about their decision making is not just from their head. We really want to use what's called whole body intelligence. Our head is important, our thoughts are important, and yet so is our emotional intelligence and our body intelligence. So emotional intelligence might be, I'm noticing fear, I'm noticing anger, I'm noticing that I feel sad. Those are important clues. A lot of times leaders are taught not to bring those emotions into the boardroom, and I think that's really the wrong way to go. These emotions can be our greatest wisdom. Our body is picking up on signals that our head is not just able to access. So emotional intelligence is important, also body intelligence. When's the last time you were in a meeting and you had that sinking feeling in your gut? You're like, this just doesn't feel right. And how many times did you override it? And think about the outcome. Did that decision turn out so great? Maybe, maybe not. And I see time and time again that leaders are overriding their gut. If they really tuned into and trusted their knowing, there's that deeper level of intelligence that they can access, not just in their analytical mind, but in their body's wisdom as well. So listening to all three centers, head, heart, and gut, is really the key to embodied decision-making. But let's talk about some common decision-making traps that come up. One of them is over-relying on logic and outcomes. Now, this might show up for an Enneagram 5. It could show up in an Enneagram 1. And what it's going to look like is just making the decision from the head, not bringing in emotional intelligence, not bringing in body intelligence, over-relying on logic as the only filter for making a decision. That's one trap that I see. A second trap that I see in decision-making is people-pleasing and seeking approval. I see this most often in Enneagram types 2 and 3. I'm a 3, and so I have noticed over and over again where I have a decision to make. I'm not wanting that to impact poorly on my image. I'm not wanting it to disrupt the approval that I might get from someone. But that's when I really dig in and I ask, what would courage decide? What's my most courageous decision here? And putting people-pleasing and seeking approval to the side. It might be a voice that's running in my head, but it's not the only voice I should be listening to. So I just want to be aware of it and see, am I making this decision and really being driven by seeking approval? And if so, can I stop myself? Can I interrupt that pattern? Another common decision-making trap that I see is rushing through discomfort. Sometimes this might come up for an Enneagram 7 that's wanting to not be stuck in pain, in boredom, in those tougher emotions. So there could be a rushing of like, let's just get through this. This could also come up for a 3, wanting to move ahead with tasks and not being as oriented to the impact of the decision on relationships as well. You could see an 8 doing this as well, rushing through discomfort. It really is like that movement towards action and not paying attention to other impacts of the decision. Another thing I see as a common decision-making trap is just avoidance or analysis paralysis. Avoidance might show up with an Enneagram Type 9, really wanting to get all of the perspectives, not wanting to rush into something without having all of the different perspectives on the table. They might also not want to cause conflict or disrupt harmony or peace. And so that can show up in decision-making as avoidance for a Type 9. Analysis paralysis is another common area. I see that with Type 5s, Type 6s, that head type that might be overthinking and feeling like that it's the mind that's going to help make the decision and not balancing out that with more of an action orientation or making sure to touch base with the emotional intelligence that's available as well. And then another common decision-making trap that I see is that tendency to push through instead of to pause, to take a breath. This might happen with an Enneagram Type 3 who wants to move on to the task, keep it going, stay goal-driven, or a 7 that is not wanting to feel those uncomfortable emotions, or an 8 as well. Might not even notice. They might just barrel forward and say, we got to make this, let's go, let's get to action. But being able to pause is an important tool for anyone, no matter what your type in decision making. Being able to take a breath, to notice, am I coming from a state of threat in making this decision, or am I coming from a state of trust and curiosity and wonder and growth? Many decisions have far-reaching implications, and other ones are not as permanent. Sometimes we fear making a decision when we might be able to still change course and learn and experiment and grow and make another decision at another time. So as leaders, we have to be aware of, can I make the best decision that I can with all the available information that I have in this moment, knowing that I may need to pivot in the future. I may need to be flexible. It may be that we learn something new that changes that decision. And the more I can remain flexible, the more I can remain in a state of curiosity, that I'm just learning as I'm going. And even if we make a wrong decision, can I pivot in the future? Can I say, hey, that didn't work, let's try something else, and still keep moving forward from that state of learning and state of growth? Sometimes when we're making a decision, it's hard. There are things that go against our natural tendencies, our natural way that we see the world. We might have to make a decision that makes us feel really uncomfortable, and yet we know that for the greater good, it's the right decision. So courageous decision-making looks like sitting with something that's tough, getting all the input that you can, and being connected with others as you make that decision. Instead of just making decisions in a vacuum as a leader, getting input, talking about the impact of the decision, and really having conversations that outline, here's how I'm viewing this, what am I missing, and asking for feedback from others can be really important. You're not an island as a leader. You have access to other people to help you make better decisions, asking for that input. And different Enneagram types are going to tend towards different poles here. Some are going to get input naturally, some are not going to seek input. So just notice, am I someone who shies away from getting input? And if so, can I be courageous and do something that might not feel natural, but I'm going to go get input? Or it could be the opposite. If you are getting too much input and you just need to move forward and take action, it might be that you need to come at it from that perspective. So I'd encourage you use all the tools available and really ultimately to know that even if you make a decision, you often have a choice to pivot in the future. Can you be flexible? Can you stay in a state of learning and growth so that whatever decision you make has the potential to be for your highest good, but you also remain flexible in being able to navigate these stormy seas. We're facing a lot of chaos and uncertainty right now. It's very volatile. You're getting new information all the time. Sometimes when I'm working with leaders on strategic planning, we're looking at a long-range decision that has long-range and wide implications. And it can be hard to make a decision when we don't have full information. We don't know what the future is holding. There was never any strategic plan where I was working with an organization and we put a contingency in for a global pandemic that was going to happen. We didn't write that into the plan. The best the leaders could do when that actually happened was to learn how to be flexible, to learn how to gather the wisdom from the moment, not just the information, but really the insight and the wisdom to make the best decision that they could in the moment. And then to consistently be looking for new information, incorporating that, and sometimes making a pivot, making a different decision. Decision making is a topic that has no cut and dried answers. There's a lot of variability. There's a lot of room for creativity too. I would also encourage you to bring creativity into the mix. When you can only see two possible solutions, you're likely coming from a state of fear and you're trying to be right. But think about how many times when you thought you were right about something, you might have been missing another viewpoint entirely. And that viewpoint might be held with another person. It might be that if you could get yourself into a state of learning and growth and possibility, instead of just having to be right, you might see other solutions emerge that you can't even imagine when it's good, bad, right, wrong, this or that. So allowing the space for creative solutions to emerge, that happens when leaders trust their gut, when they tune into their wisdom in their bodies, in their emotional centering. That's when you have a whole new layer of energy to access when you're making decisions. So if you'd like support in working on a decision that feels complex, where you feel stuck, please reach out. I guide leaders all the time in coming back to themselves. I'm not giving you advice on how to make the decision. I'm guiding you back home and bringing you a set of tools that you can use to make the best decision for your situation as a leader. So before we dive back into this episode, I want to tell you a little bit more about Discover Your Enneagram Type. This is our offering for anyone who's new to the Enneagram. What you'll get is you'll get an assessment from Integrative Enneagram that has a $125 retail value. That includes a 42-page report. And then you'll get a 45-minute coaching session with me where we'll unpack that report, look at your type, look at type structures, and answer any questions that you've got. After that, you have access to our Enneagram Explorers community. This is a hub where you can connect with other people that I'm working with, where you can ask questions. We have monthly Q&A. We have resources and other practices in this community. So if you're new to the Enneagram, or if it's been a while since you've taken an assessment, or you never really took an assessment in the first place, jump into Discover Your Enneagram Type. That is at stephaniefreeth.com/offerings to learn more. Discover Your Enneagram Type. Would love to see you go through this and be able to work with you one-on-one. It's a really powerful process. The Enneagram can bring so much clarity to things that you've known for a long time or you've experienced, but it just puts a whole new angle as to your deeper motivations. Why are you doing what you're doing? And you can apply that in your life or in your work as well. So sign up for Discover Your Enneagram Type. It's at stephaniefreeth.com/offerings. So one of the best ways to lower drama in decision-making in teams is to state at the beginning who has the decision rights. So if a leader is asking for input, they could say, I'm asking for input from my senior leadership team on this decision, but ultimately the decision rests with me. I have the decision rights. I'm going to make the final decision. And when that's clarified, people can be able to give their thoughts, and then later they won't really be like, well, he didn't even pay any attention to what I said. Well, he may have taken into account, but still made a different decision. The other example is sometimes the decision is best made by the people who are closest to the data or the experience. So that could be subgroup decides. So empowering a group to say, it's your decision, we're going to give input, even if the leader's giving input, ultimately the subgroup is giving the decision. And even when you are going all the way up to alignment, where you're trying to have as many people bought in and supporting the decision, you always need a fallback decision right, because you will inevitably, if alignment isn't found, it still might be like, okay, we're going to go for alignment, but the fallback decision right is the buck stops here. It's that the leader's deciding. So there's a great video that I recommend from Conscious Leadership Group. It's called Defining Decision Rights, and we'll link that in the description and in this document. Another framework that I use a lot is called RACI. This is more of an analytical framework, and it really is looking at who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed. So especially when I'm doing strategic planning work with groups and where there's a matrix reporting structure, and it's not clear who ultimately has who needs to be consulted, who needs to be informed, and who is deciding. The person who's responsible is the one where the buck stops there. The person who is accountable is often the driver. So there could be a boss that is ultimately responsible, everything rolls up to them, but the driver is the accountable one, and they're the ones that are really leading that decision. And then consulted means that you're going to get input, and then informed means we're going to share this decision, but they may not be consulted along the way. So I'm happy to help with this, implementing this framework. It's one of those that at first can be a little daunting, and yet it can really help get clarity in a hybrid or matrix decision-making situation. Let's talk today about how your Enneagram type influences your decision-making. And a lot of times this is something that is very unconscious. So I want to help you understand how your Enneagram type is showing up in your decision-making, whether you know it or not. So let's talk about how Enneagram type 1s make decisions. This is the strict perfectionist. So for 1s, they're really going to be thinking about what is the right and correct decision here. Remember, 1s are often having black, white, good, bad, yes, no types of decisions. So they want that decision outcome to be right and correct from their point of view. That's one thing they're going to be considering. They're also going to be considering, have I followed the rules and the standards in this decision? So sometimes, again, kind of going back to decision rights, there might be rules to follow, processes to implement. 1s are going to be paying a lot of attention to, did they follow the correct rules and standards in that decision? And if there aren't rules or standards for a given decision, they may find that tricky. They may find that gray area tough to navigate. The third thing that type 1s are dealing with in decision making is, am I making a mistake if I make this decision? The 1s are going to have that high critical judge inside, not wanting to make a mistake and wanting to do the right thing. And so they may really heavily weigh, am I making a mistake if I make this decision? So you can see how this particular lens is going to be the focus of attention for the type 1 in making a decision. So I recommend just paying attention to it, being aware, realizing that this is just how your type structure is going to be viewing this decision. Let's talk about how type 2s make decisions. These are the considerate helpers. The 2 is going to first be thinking about, how will this decision impact others? That focus is going to be external. How's the impact landing for the people I'm leading, for the people who are being affected by this decision? The second thing that type 2s are looking at is, will someone still like me if I make this decision? So anything that disrupts connection for a 2, and actually for any of the heart types, is distressing for a 2. So 2s might really struggle with, am I going to be liked if I make this decision? It may impede them from making a tough call. The third thing that 2s are looking at is they may put their other people's needs ahead of their own when they're making a decision. They might think, well, this isn't going to be a good decision for me, but it's going to be good for other people. And so I'm going to put other people's needs ahead of mine. Now, that could be problematic. It could be noble in some cases, but it could be problematic in other cases, especially if it's repeatedly happening and if burnout is happening on the team. That could be part of the decision-making, unconscious ways that an Enneagram Type 2 is making decisions. Enneagram Type 3s, how are they making decisions? So here are 3 things that Type 3s are going to be bringing into their decision-making process. Will this decision help me achieve my goals? So 3s are goal-driven, they're goal-oriented, task-oriented. They want to make decisions that are going to help them achieve their goals. And if it's not going to help them achieve their goals, they might not think the decision's all that important, or they might just kind of skip over it or make a hastily considered decision. The next one is, how will this decision impact my image or reputation? So type 3s they're great at meeting people where they are, but they can also shapeshift and overly meet people where they are. So they may be overly concerned with their own image or reputation in the decision. And the third thing that type 3s are thinking about in decision making is this decision going to help me shine, help me get ahead, or serve my agenda? That's really the lens that the 3s are thinking through. And again, if it's outside of that area, then it may not be as important, or maybe it's a decision that's in someone else's court, perhaps. So what are Enneagram Type 4s considering subconsciously when they're making decisions? They may be thinking about, how can this decision bring more beauty, more authenticity to this situation? That's going to be their lens. They want to bring that to anything that's happening, so that's going to affect their decision making. They also might be thinking about, how will this decision help me be special or avoid appearing defective? And the third thing that Enneagram Type 4s are thinking about is, how will I compare to others if I make this decision? So sometimes 4s are, again, wanting to be special, and they're going to think about that comparative part in their decision-making process. What are Enneagram Type 5s thinking about when they make decisions? Their filter is going to be, what are all the facts and the data that I need to make this decision? Will this decision increase the demands on my time or energy? And will the decision make me look foolish? These are running in the background for an Enneagram Type 5. For an Enneagram Type 6, when they are making a decision, they're going to be thinking about, what do I need to plan for or be prepared for? They've got that risk assessment running always in the background, and they're really going to want to plan. They might also be thinking about, what could go wrong if I make this decision? And are there hidden meanings or agendas that I am missing? So 6s are the loyal skeptic. They're going to be looking for risk in a lot of different formats. So sometimes it can be helpful for an Enneagram 6 to not only think what could go wrong, but also proactively think about what could go right here. And then the decision isn't coming from fear necessarily, but maybe from curiosity. For Enneagram Type 7s, when they're making a decision, what's coming up for them is, will this decision increase fun and positivity? Could this decision limit my possibilities? And does this choice provide interesting options? Remember, Enneagram 7s don't want to be bored. They don't want to be stuck in pain. And so when they're making a decision, they're really going to be they want to keep options open. They don't want to close them down. They want it to be fun. They want it to be interesting. For Enneagram Type 8s, what's influencing their decision making is, how will this decision bring solutions and results? 8s want to get things done. They want to move forward. They want to take action. The next thing is, will this decision help me stay in control and avoid looking weak? Because remember, Enneagram type 8s are motivated by wanting to limit that weakness and wanting to stay in control. And then the third thing they're thinking about is, does this decision expand my influence? 8s are wanting more influence, and if the decision can expand influence, that's going to feel like an easier decision for an Enneagram type 8. And type 9s, what they're thinking about when they're making decision is, have I made sure everyone has been heard, respected, and considered? They're going to be wanting to hear from all the other types, bringing all of that information to the table. They're also thinking about, how can this decision help me keep the peace and avoid conflict? And the third thing that Enneagram 9s are thinking about in decision making is, could this decision lower the demands on me to change or do something? This is where you can have some passive aggressiveness, some stubbornness that can come up for 9s, but they're not going to want to make a decision that's going to increase the demands on them necessarily. So those are 3 tips for each Enneagram type and how they make decisions. It's really good to be aware of how this is operating, because this is something that you might not even notice. Like, well, of course I'm making decisions from this perspective. But when you see that other people are making decisions with other filters, it also helps you understand where someone else might be coming from. And if you're feeling conflict with someone who's making a decision, it's important to be compassionate with your own decision-making filters and with theirs as well. And that might open up some conversation about, hey, have we considered these other factors when we're making these decisions? So I really hope that you will keep your own Enneagram type in mind as you're making decisions, and that you will learn about other types as well to help make the best decisions for the team that you're working with. So we've been through different ways to make decisions. The first tip is, can you check your perception? Are you making that decision from a state of threat? Or are you making that decision from a place of curiosity, learning, growth, and trust? These are very different ways to make a decision. Being able just to notice, hey, my perception is coming from a state of fear. Okay, I can see that. Breathe. You might want to take a walk. You might want to interrupt that pattern, but just notice like, oh, I'm in a state of fear, because just noticing that is going to help you be aware that you're coming from a state of fear. And you might be able to shift and come from a state of curiosity before you make that final decision. Another thing that we looked at is engaging all 3 centers of intelligence, not just your head, but your heart and your gut as well. This is embodied decision making. Yes, analytics are important. Your head is important. All the knowledge that you've gained is important. And yet wisdom and knowledge are 2 different things. And our bodies hold a different type of wisdom and resonance that we can tap into. We can tap into our emotions as wisdom, whether it's fear, sadness, anger, joy. Those emotions are here to tell us something. We can listen to them and be like, oh, I'm noticing fear here. What do I need to wake up to or pay attention to? Or I'm noticing anger here. What boundary might need to be set? What needs to stop or change? That's the type of wisdom we can access when we really tune in to our emotional intelligence. And then making decisions from body intelligence, noticing that pit in your stomach, noticing like my jaw is clenched, I'm feeling tight around this, I'm carrying a lot of stuff in my shoulder. Our bodies are intelligent, and when we listen to them, we make better whole body, rounded decisions that come from a place of using all 3 centers of intelligence. The other tools that are fantastic for decision making in teams include defining decision rights up front and using something like the RACI model of responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. It's another way that I love to work with clients in helping to define who's making the decision, who has those rights, and how's that decision being communicated. And the other way that's really important to access is, how is your Enneagram type showing up in your decision making? And when you can be aware of that and look to counterbalance that and even bring in other types, like how would a 6 make this decision? How would a 5 make this decision? Then you can round out your own type's biases. And I would encourage you to reflect. as you're making a decision, the more urgency you have sometimes means that you're not considering the deeper possibilities and really sitting with a decision. And different types from the Enneagram will make decisions more quickly or more slowly. So noticing, like, am I feeling a pressure to make this decision? Do I need to give myself more time? Are there others that I need to consult and bring in some more input on this decision? That's really important as you're making decisions. So decision making is a really wide topic, and depending on the type of decision, there are going to be different tools and different needs. There's also different biases in our perception. So I love to listen to leaders and hear from them. If they're stuck on a decision, I first listen, and I'm hearing what they're bringing to the table. I'm listening for how are they perceiving this? Are they perceiving it from a state of threat or from a state of trust? And then we walk through the different considerations for the decision. I love accompanying leaders as they're making decisions. There are a lot of tools that I help them apply. So if you're looking for support around making really important decisions for your team, for your company, for your organization, please reach out. I would be happy to walk it through with you, be your guide, help you bring all these decision-making tools to bear so that you can make the best decision that's in the highest alignment for your greatest good and for the greatest good of your team and your company. So to wrap up, better decision-making impacts all of your leadership. It leads to better teams and how they're functioning with each other and better outcomes in terms of your profit, in terms of your processes, in terms of people, in terms of performance. And by integrating your perceptual awareness of where you're making the decision from a state of threat or from a state of trust, and by using your emotional intelligence, your body intelligence, in addition to those structured decision-making frameworks that are analytical, those have a place too. All of these different components will help you make better decisions that will be embodied, that will be holistic, that will be looking at something from all angles so that you're lowering drama, aligning around the best impact and the best outcomes that you can create. I also help teams with decision-making in a retreat setting. Sometimes getting all of the information on the table and having a skilled facilitator who can bring all the voices into the room is really important for teams to make better decisions. Having that space to be able to pause, to be able to be in a different setting, to have an agenda for what areas you'd like to focus your attention on really helps teams make better decisions, because sometimes the leader who's used to facilitating the meeting, if they're facilitating, then their voice doesn't get on the table as well. So having a skilled facilitator to handle the room, to handle the conversation, to help with curiosity, bring out your best thinking, help encourage you to use your different centers of intelligence, your emotional intelligence, as well as your body intelligence, is really important to help you make the best decisions. Right now, we are booking the team retreats for better decision making. We're booking into the late summer and into the fall. So please reach out if there's a retreat that you are thinking about putting together, if there's some big decisions that need to be made with a group. I love to guide teams through that exercise and through half-day or full-day retreats to help you make better decisions. Those can be in person, they can be on Zoom, and those are being scheduled right now. So if you're looking for a partner to help guide you in making better decisions, I'd love to support you. Please reach out today. Let's have a conversation about how you can make the best decisions for your company, for your team. That's a wrap for today's episode of Courageous Leaders Connected Teams. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this episode, please pass it along to a friend who may enjoy it. Leave us a review and let us know what type of other content you'd like to hear in the future. We really enjoy and read all of your comments that come through. So in the meantime, stay courageous, stay connected.